A well-known doctor in Los Angeles is shot dead in a murder-for-hire ambush outside his own clinic. Months later, police make a shocking arrest in the case, authorities now saying the victim's ex-wife is responsible for his murder. And even more disturbing, she allegedly did it for financial gain and even enlisted the help of others. Let's start at the very beginning because this case takes a lot of twists and turns. It all started back on August 23rd in Woodland Hills, California. Around 5:30 p.m., 61-year-old Dr. Hamid Mirshojae, a well-respected physician with a long list of well-known clients, was wrapping up a full day of patients. He was heading to his car in the parking lot of his own clinic when the unthinkable happened. A masked gunman snuck up behind him armed with a handgun. The suspect fired one single shot, hitting the doctor in the back of the head, and he collapsed to the ground almost instantly. The suspect then turned around and fled the scene, leaving the doctor dead on the ground. It was about 40 minutes later when police were finally called to the scene, but by the time they arrived, it was too late. In the aftermath, investigators were left with little to go on. No witnesses had come forward, and there were no CCTV cameras around the clinic to help either. The murder was a random and motiveless crime, or so it appeared. But after months of investigation, a breakthrough came that turned the case on its head. Police arrested the victim's ex-wife, Ahang Kalk, who just weeks prior was mourning the death of her ex-husband in now deleted social media posts. The investigation into her arrest lies in a long and bitter legal battle that dates all the way back to 2009. According to court documents, their relationship had been troubled for years, filled with allegations of threats, fraud, and even violence. The doctor had accused Kalk, his ex-wife, of emptying his bank accounts, stealing property, and even using violent tactics to control him. In one filing, he accused Kalk of fraud, claiming she tried to hide assets to avoid paying him what he was owed. He even went so far as to obtain a restraining order against her, claiming she had threatened him. The couple fought over everything, from their shared assets to the family home, and their post-divorce years had been filled with legal battles and bitterness too. The conflict only intensified as Kalk continued to push for a larger share of her ex's estate, and it soon became clear that both people were determined to fight until the end. They were due in court again over another fraud case just days before the doctor's murder. And now, nearly 4 months after that, authorities finally arrested Kalk just this month. But the story doesn't end there. Investigators also arrested 4 other people who they believe Kalk hired to carry out the murder. There's Evan Hardman, a 41-year-old man from Texas who was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Police say he is the one who shot the victim. There's also Ashley Rose Sweeting, a 40-year-old woman who was arrested as an accessory to murder. She's accused of being the getaway driver. 2 other individuals, 26-year-old Sarella Jaweed and 46-year-old Sean Randolph, were also charged with the murder. Jaweed is accused of driving Hartman away from the scene, and it turns out that both Hardman and Jaweed had a history with the doctor, also having been involved in an earlier incident back in May, where they allegedly attacked him with baseball bats. Police believe this attack was part of a larger scheme to threaten the victim. Kalk, his ex-wife, is accused of hiring this large group to carry out the murder to reap the benefits of her ex-husband's estate and to get revenge for years of bitterness. But what made the case even more disturbing was the extent to which Kalk allegedly concealed her true intentions. She'd presented herself as a devastated ex-wife, sharing emotional posts on social media and expressing her loss. One particular post, which she deleted after her arrest, read, quote, "Hamid, the kids and I are in so much shock. We miss you so bad." But behind closed doors, police say she had been plotting his murder. Now, we have another bizarre case today. Let's dig in with law enforcement instructor Sunny Slaughter. It's great to see you, Sunny, under kind of sad circumstances.
It's great to see you too. This case is mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing. That's such a good word. I'm hoping you can make some sense of it for us too, because there are a lot of layers. And the first one that jumps out immediately is the fact that this is a murder for hire. Honestly, that sounds like some sort of movie plot, but these things really happen.
They absolutely do. The murder for hire cases can be very personal for me because I had a murder for hire in our family. This case is particularly heinous and horrific because this is the ex-wife that we are talking about, and the number of people involved. And we're talking about California, where their special circumstances are. I saw, and I'm like, oh, this is horrific, horrific, horrific. A lot of layers, as you said, in this particular case, where the wife, the ex-wife, I'm not sure why she actually did this. And I think, for prosecution, they don't need the motive, but I know that law enforcement, we always want to know why, how, put it together, all of the people that she contacted. I am looking for that when this case actually happens with the trial.
You mentioned motive, and I really think that's the question on everyone's mind. Why would this have been carried out? There were 5 people that were involved. A lot to talk about. So let's start with the relationship of these two, an accused killer and unfortunately the victim here, a doctor. They'd actually gotten divorced back in 2010. So quite a while ago. But since then, the relationship was a bit torrid. I mean, there were accusations of abuse, embezzlement, restraining orders. Are these all things that investigators would take a look at now?
They would absolutely be looking at this because those are the threads that need to be pulled on to determine what the motive is. Now, I've already seen that they said there's a financial motive. So, like you said, 2010 to 2024, that's a long span of time. There's been a lot of violence in this case, the embezzlement. So, what exactly caused this particular break at this time? But they're going to have to go back in order to come forward.
And I think in addition to those past run-ins with the law, if we want to call them those, we also have a lot of data in cell phones. I know we talk about this so much in all of our cases, but they're honestly invaluable. If we go through and look at the wife's text conversations with her ex-husband or with the other alleged perpetrators here, I mean, is that what investigators will be doing, going through WhatsApp, their texts, Signal, things like that?
They will be going through all of those things, the text messages. They will look at email accounts for everyone. They will look at the WhatsApp accounts. They will look at bank accounts to see what type of transactions may have occurred that funded this particular murder for hire. They will also look at email threads. They will look at people who are connected to them to see what their information looks like, because sometimes there's a workaround that an actual, or alleged in this case, perpetrator will go through. They'll go through another family member to get the connection. So they'll be looking at a lot of data. They will look at cameras in the areas and locations before, during, and after the incident to see when they were there, because I think these are the two alleged individuals who may have committed a violent act against him at one time or another with a bat.
You pointed this out, which is really interesting about this specific case, is that there are 5 people who are accused of being involved in this murder for hire. And immediately I'm thinking, okay, quite a bit of people. I mean, the more people you tell, the more people they could tell, the more easily this story could get out. I'm wondering about that, this group, let's say, of 5 people. I mean, the wife didn't apparently pull the trigger, someone else did. They all worked together. How are investigators going to track down everyone involved if there are more people involved too?
So, see, that's what happens in this type of scheme. When you have a lot of people, just like you said, the more people you tell, the more people that know, are the more ways in which you are exposed. So law enforcement, they have a core set of individuals, but they're going to look like spider webs to see what other threads and what other individuals, based on text messaging and information and conversation. And they're going to look for the weakest link, those that they can potentially charge or give the deal to first. Who wants to say that this is what happens? This is a conspiracy, and in a conspiracy, there's always a weak link. So they're going to be looking for a lot of people. They're going to be asking a lot of questions, and even family members, because this is like a family affair.
A weak link is what you said. And that's something we've seen on the many trials we cover here, that someone involved in a scheme like this, accused of murder or the like, then turns on the person who was so close to them. Do you think that's what prosecutors are doing here, trying to flip some of these witnesses or defendants?
That is absolutely what they are trying to do. When you put somebody what we call in the box for an interview, the detectives are gathering information because there's always more than one interview. So they take those interviews and then they go through them again to determine what information was provided from one that might connect to the other, who seems more vulnerable, who seems to have more issues that they can pull on and then glean from. They offer everyone a deal saying that this person is going to turn on you, and whoever takes the deal first that has the most information, that's what they're going to do.
I think there are a couple questions about the timeline in this case too, because the shooting happened back in the summer. We're inching now closer to 2025, so it's been at least several months. I'm wondering why it may have taken so long from the murder to these arrests. Could it possibly be that investigators were still combing through evidence? Prosecutors wanted to make sure they had enough evidence before pressing any charges?
Absolutely. They had a lot of people to interview. And also, the ex-wife said she was so sad and everything. Now, you wouldn't automatically think that the ex-wife of all this time might be connected until you learn about the history. And that would have to come from interviewing others who you would ask, is there anyone that you think might want this done? And then you have to go back. Detectives have to take their time. This is shoe leather type of work that we're talking about, where they're going to have interviews, going to have conversations. And, a lot of people want things to happen quickly. But the problem with that in an investigation is being fast doesn't mean that you're fair, and it doesn't mean that you're accurate. So you want to reduce the number of critical errors and missteps in order to get the information that makes the timeline seem seamless for the prosecution and not necessarily for the public eye.
Hey, all you business owners or anyone wanting to start a side hustle, I have to take a quick second and tell you about something that can seriously level up your business game. It's odoo.com and their incredible accounting app. You know how keeping track of finances can get messy and even confusing? Well, Odoo makes it super simple. With their accounting app, you can manage invoices, expenses, and even get financial reports all in one place. Look at this clean interface. It's designed to save you time and reduce headaches. You can automate those repetitive tasks, which means you'll have more time to focus on what you really love, growing your business. Or in my case, that's drinking some Diet Coke. Ah, listen to that sound. So if you want to take control of your finances and make accounting a whole lot easier, check out Odoo's accounting app at our link odoo.com/lcnews26 and try Odoo for free today. Let's talk a bit more about the ex-wife, because obviously she is the link to the victim because they had their relationship, they were together, divorced, it was messy. Okay, so she is a big player in all of this. And something that you mentioned right at the top of our interview is there are special circumstances in this case. So she is charged with special circumstances for lying in wait. Can you explain that a bit to me?
Yeah. So the lying in wait in the special circumstances in California, they're a death penalty state, but the death penalty has a moratorium. So the special circumstances in this particular case, and in all cases, allows for the prosecution, if the person is convicted of first degree murder, to then uh, the charge would be life without the possibility of parole, or it would have been the death penalty. But in LA specifically, they're no longer doing the death penalty right now because there's a moratorium on it. So, if convicted, anyone in this particular case, and there are multiple people who, and it's a first degree murder case, they would get those special circumstances. Now, the line in wait is if you are targeting someone and you lie in wait, that means you are literally waiting for them. You are hiding out. You are surveilling them and waiting for the opportunity. And that's how you kill them. That is called lying in wait. And that's a general way to explain it, where you're just kind of hiding and waiting for someone. And that's what happened in this case, where he came out of his office and someone was waiting, the individual to actually pull the trigger, and they came upon him, no warning, no nothing, and killed him instantly.
Just to play devil's advocate in all of this, the way that investigators have laid out this crime to the public, they believe the ex wife did not pull the trigger, yet she is still charged with murder. Someone else pulled the trigger, shot and killed the victim, but she didn't pull the trigger. I mean, there's no way around that. What do you think? What do you make of that, rather? Do you think that she should still be charged with this murder charge?
So that is not unusual. The conspiracy started with her. So she is a corroborator and collaborator in this particular murder. So you don't have to be the person that actually pulled the trigger in order to be a person that is charged with the same crime, the same offense, and receive the same amount of time as the individual who actually pulled the trigger. She created this firestorm based on what they're saying now. So, therefore, she is just as guilty as the individual who pulled the trigger. The corroborating facts, she's a player in this, and she's a player at the top level and not a part of the conspiracy at the lower level, because there are two other individuals who are not charged with the same special circumstances and to the same degree as the other three are.
Let's really zero in on the details of the murder as we know them right now. Lying in wait, that's something that we've discussed. But the person who apparently pulled the trigger shot from a close distance. This stood out to me right away. It's not like we have an assassin who is hundreds of yards away. This is a person who is pretty close. And to me, I thought immediately, okay, they wanted to make sure they got the job done. They wanted to make sure 100% this person was murdered. Does that play into things at all? The closeness and intimacy of the crime?
Yes, because the individual did not know exactly when he would be leaving his office. So he left his office a little after 5, and then the individual had to be, the lying in wait is that they were literally for some time potentially waiting. And they saw that he was alone, so they would come out. This individual apparently came out from behind, and they took the headshot, which is always unique in and of itself, that you are taking a close enough headshot, or sometimes, but not in this case, a close contact shot to ensure that the individual is deceased. And that's what they did in this case. So, you know, they wanted, as you said earlier, to ensure that he was deceased, that he could never come back, that he, no surgery, no anything. And that's horrific and heinous in and of itself, the way in which this happened and how quickly it happened. And in broad daylight. At 5:30, it's still daylight, even at this time of year. It's still light outside.
You're right. The details of this are incredibly tragic. This is a person who went to work and thought that he was going home afterward, and his life tragically cut short. I mean, we can't forget those details about it. But I know that investigators are working hard on this case. We talked about this previously. They worked for months before any charges were pressed, and the investigation is not completely over as of now. Where do you think investigators are going from here?
I think investigators are still looking to ensure that no one else is involved in this particular crime. They also want to tie up any loose ends, because in the special circumstances case, you also, the DA said that there was something financial about this. So they need to ensure that they have all of the documentation for the prosecution around that financial means. From the law enforcement investigation to the prosecution until it reaches the public, it needs to be a story that is told, that is not complicated. It is already convoluted with the individuals, but it needs to flow seamlessly. It needs to be easy to listen to and easy to understand, even though the circumstances are very complicated.
There are really so many moving parts in this case, and it's honestly just shocking the fact that this family, his friends, have to deal with a murder for hire plot. You mentioned that you had been involved in a murder for hire plot as well, one of your family members. I mean, our hearts just go out for you, the people involved. It's such a stressful case. But Sunny Slaughter, thank you for coming on with us and giving us some insight into what we know right now.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for having me on this particular case because my brother in law was murdered uh, so many years ago, about 15, 17 years ago this month. So these cases matter and they do take a long time. The fact that law enforcement didn't let it go is a testament to their tenacity to solve cases like this.
And it's devastating the fact that you're still talking about this decades later. It still reaches the victim's family members and friends. It never fully goes away. So I appreciate you sharing your story with us and definitely will continue to follow this case.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to being on again.
Following the arrests, Los Angeles County District Attorney Nathan Hochman said in a statement, quote, "The horror and betrayal of this crime are beyond words. The depth of the deceit and violence involved in this case is chilling, and we will not rest until justice is served." As for the other suspects in the case, Hartman is awaiting extradition to California, where the prosecution is requesting he's held without bail. Sweeting appeared in court for her first arraignment last week, where she pleaded not guilty, and Jaweed is being held without bail. She's scheduled to be arraigned on December 30th. Aheng Kelk is now facing a murder charge with special circumstances. She's due back in court on January 6th for her arraignment. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Gillespie.